Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while. But we're not gonna talk about that because we have a lot to get through today. As I'm sure you read by now in the title, we are going to be going through every single book I read this year in 2025. So I'm super excited. I'm literally just sat here on the floor ready to yap about books, which is like my favorite thing in the world. So I'm super excited. So get comfortable, get cozy. We could be here for a while. Feel free to put me on the background and just listen to me yap. But yeah, let's get started. All right, first things first, we're gonna start off with some stats. My goal was to read 25 books this year, and I actually ended up reading 35 books, so very proud of myself. I don't think I've ever beat my reading goal by like that much of a margin, so I'm very proud. But there was also like a 3-month gap this year where I didn't read a single book because I was in like such a deep reading slump. I think it was, wait, I can see. It was, yeah, August, September, October, I didn't read a single book. Like I started a bunch and then I would get like 50 or 60 pages into a book and then I like couldn't continue. I don't know what it was. I just like couldn't read anything, which also explains why I've been so inactive on here. But I'm back now and I've been reading a lot, so be expecting more content in the future. So like I said, I read 35 books in total, and that came out to 13,699 pages. My top genres were romance, obviously, contemporary, young adult, fantasy, and thriller. And my most read authors of the year were Rick Yancey, Emily Henry, and Rebecca Ross. There were 9 books this year that I gave 5 stars, which is a lot, but a lot of these were rereads because after my reading slump, I just wanted to like reread a bunch of my old favorites to like get me out of the slump. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 of those 9 were rereads. So really, I gave 5 new books 5 stars this year. And then I also had a few 1 and 2 stars this year, which is kind of rare for me because usually if I'm not enjoying a book, I just don't finish it. And I only give ratings to books that I actually finish. So it's pretty unlikely that I give a book 1 star or 2 stars because that would have meant that like I didn't like it, but I still somehow like trudged through the whole thing. But that did happen this year, and I don't want to give away what books those are, but if you keep watching, you'll find out. But yeah, let's get started with January. All right, so in January, I only read 1 book, and it was The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. So the way I think I'm going to do this is I'm going to give a very, very brief synopsis of each book, because if I actually go into detail, we're going to be here all night. So I'll start with a brief synopsis, and then basically just explain whether or not I think you should read it. Okay, so this is a young adult mystery thriller. So the book basically follows this girl, I need to check her name. Okay, her name is Belle, and her mom went missing like when she was young. There's like video footage of her and her mom walking into a mall and then no footage of the mom ever walking out, but then she as like a baby is like found in an abandoned car like miles away on the highway. So the case is never solved and it kind of becomes this like big mystery, and it's become really popular in like the true crime realm, I guess. And so years later, Belle is now grown up. I think she's like, I don't know, like 17 or 18 during the book or something. But her family's basically contacted by a documentary crew to make like a documentary about like her mom and like how the family is doing now and whatever. So they're filming this documentary, and in the midst of filming, her mom like all of a sudden just shows back up. Hence why it's called The Reappearance of Rachel Price. And then throughout the book, you're finding out like what's the actual story behind her disappearance, because she comes back, but it seems like she's lying about stuff and hiding, and you're like, why is she lying? Like, why is this, like, why is she being so sus? And yeah, that's essentially the book. And I would definitely recommend this. I think I read this book in literally like 1 or 2 sittings. Like it was very easy to read. I like flew through it super quickly. Really engaging plot. I remember I like stayed up really late to finish it because like each chapter would just like end off on a cliffhanger, and I would be like, well, now I have to keep reading and like I have to finish it. So it was really good, and I really liked the plot twist at the end. So yeah, I would recommend. Okay, now moving on to February, I read 5 books this month, and I guess I was just really feeling like the Valentine's Day mood or something, because 4 of the 5 books I read this month were actually romances. So, I don't know, a lot of romance this month. But the first book of the 5 was actually Frankenstein, and this was for my European history class. Don't ask. But obviously everyone knows the story of Frankenstein, but I actually like really enjoyed reading it. It was also super short and it was a lot easier to read than I thought it was going to be for a classic. So yeah, it was really interesting and I would recommend it. And I want to get into reading more classics this year because that's not typically like a genre that I ever read, but this was definitely a good experience. So I think I will continue that going into 2026. Okay. The next book was Picking Daisies on Sundays by Liana Cincotti, I think is how you say her name. I'm not like remembering a ton about this one, but I do remember that I thought it was just like a very like cute, fluffy romance. Like I texted my little sister afterwards and I was like, I think you would really like this one. So like if you're in the mood for just like, you know, like a cute little romance, then I would recommend this. The next book I read was Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. Now this is part of an interconnected standalone series. So it's actually the 3rd book in the series, but because they're all standalones, like you can read them in any order. So I ended up reading this one first. And I thought it was good. This felt like such a classic rom-com. It's about these 2, I think they're like kindergarten or no, I think they're like 2nd grade teachers, but they work in an elementary school. I think they like have known each other since college, and like from college they like got off on the wrong foot, and ever since then they just like keep running into each other's lives, and they always seem to find themselves in like a rivalry position, and then they also end up being neighbors. So that whole dynamic kind of reminded me a little bit of Beach Read by Emily Henry, which is one of my favorite books. So I really liked that, and again, this was just really fun. It like literally felt like a classic rom-com. So I would definitely recommend this, but again, like it wasn't anything like revolutionary. So the next book I read is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Now this was my favorite romance book that I've read the whole year. It was so beautiful and so deep. Like I read this in February and I still think about it. Like so good. Like the story was just so beautiful. There's a lot of themes about like opening up and being able to like trust someone again once you've been like hurt that badly, and I was just so moved by it. It's books like these that like make me like love the romance genre. Like so good. Like I would highly recommend. I even bought this book for one of my best friends, and then she texted me back and she was like, holy shit, like that was amazing, and like she was like raving about it to like her friends and stuff. So don't just take my word for it, like take Zombies as well. The last book for February was another Abby Jimenez book. It's Just for the Summer, which I think came out the year after Yours Truly did. And I read this one because I had such a good experience with Yours Truly that I wanted to read like her like newest release. I liked this, but I definitely didn't like it as much as Yours Truly. I think I definitely connected with the characters in Yours Truly a lot more than I did with this, but I would still definitely recommend it because there wasn't anything particular that I didn't like about the book. I just didn't develop as strong of a connection to the characters, but you might, so definitely still recommend. Okay, on to March. So in March I also only read one book, and it was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Obviously, this was her new release this year. It is one of the prequels to The Hunger Games. This book was about the 50th Hunger Games, which is Haymitch's games, who's like the mentor in the original trilogy. Yeah, obviously I love this. It was an easy 5 stars. I am so excited for the movie. I was like following those casting announcements like religiously, and the trailer dropped like a few weeks ago. Or it wasn't even the trailer, it was a teaser. It was maybe 2 minutes, if even. And I've already seen like these beautiful like cinematic edits on TikTok, and the only thing that's out is like a 2-minute teaser trailer. It's insane. But I'm so excited. I feel like I don't really have to explain much. Like it speaks for itself. We can move on. Okay, now for April, I read 4 books this month. So starting off, the first book I read was Born for This by Caitlin Devlin. I'm gonna pull this up on Goodreads actually because I do not remember the plot that well. Give me a second. Okay, this is one of the books I gave 2 stars. So basically, we are following this girl named Harley, who is a Nepo baby in Hollywood, and her aunt was this really famous movie star named Rachel Carmichael. But Harley doesn't really have like any relationship with Rachel. But Harley really wants to be an actress. And she, all her life, has been told by people that she looks just like Rachel, like she gets that all the time. And I don't remember if it was her idea or if someone else contacted her. Oh, no. It was one of her classmates from college who wants to be a director. But together they come up with the idea to make a biopic about like Rachel's life and star Harley in it, because there was all this drama about Rachel when she was younger, because there was all these rumors that she was having an affair with a director from like one of her movies, but he was married, so it was like people didn't know if they were actually like if the affair was real or not. So their plan was to basically have Harley get into contact with her aunt again, and then they would do all these interviews and basically get her life story, and then her friend who wants to be a director would turn it into a script, and then they would like make a movie, and this would be like Harley's big breakout role. So Harley reconnects with Rachel and they do these interviews, but throughout the book you kind of get a feeling that like Rachel's kind of like lying about what's happening, because the book is told from Harley's perspective, hearing Rachel tell her these stories, but then it also switches to Rachel's actual POV from when she was younger. And you as the reader start noticing, it starts off as like small little details that aren't the same from Rachel's retelling of it versus like her actual POV of it. And these start to become like larger, and they are like more important details that are different. So as the reader, you figure out she's lying, but you don't know why she's lying, and there's like a reveal. Why did I not like this book? I didn't like the pacing of it. I just thought it was slow and it was weird. I hated every character, and I also just found some parts of it like so disturbing, which was the point. Like it was supposed to kind of highlight the like power imbalance that exists in Hollywood between like impressionable like young girls trying to like make it in the industry and these like higher up execs like taking advantage of that, which was the whole point. But it made me feel uneasy, and then I just didn't have a positive experience reading the book. But I don't know, I think the concept was still interesting. If what I explained to you sounds interesting, then you should go for it. I just don't think it was for me. Okay, so the next book that I read in April was These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This was a romantasy with a love triangle in it. I need to look on Goodreads. Oh my god. Oh, okay. It's following this girl, and her sister ends up getting kidnapped by this like Fae king. So there's like 2 Fae courts. There's the Seelie and then the Unseelie. Her sister ends up being taken by the Unseelie king, and so she has to go into the Fae realm, and the king says, if you find these 3 objects for me, I'll give you your sister back. But that involves her having to basically kind of like be a spy in the Seelie court to like find these 3 items to save her sister. And so in doing this, she's like caught between like these like the weird politics, and then there's also like this rebel group that she ends up working with. And it like basically, if you can't tell by this description, it has like all the elements of like every like stereotypical like romantasy. So I gave it 3 stars because it was fine, like it was good. But as you can tell, it has like tropes and plots that have happened in like so many other romantasy books. So in my notes I literally wrote very stereotypical romantasy, but if you're in the mood for that, it checks all the boxes. So that's that. Okay, so the next 2 books for April are part of the same series, so I'm just gonna talk about them together. But it was the Magnolia Parks universe, and so the first book is called Magnolia Parks, and then the second book is called Daisy Hates. Okay, so how to explain this? I was intrigued because the way it was described to me was Gossip Girl if it was set in London. So I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like a bunch of like too rich for their own good teenagers with a bunch of drama and like whatever. And at this point, I knew that I was gonna be studying abroad in London, so I was like, I wanna read more books set in London, you know? So I read Magnolia Parks, and it was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster. So this book is classified as a romance, but honestly, it should be in the horror section because this whole book is literally just about this girl, Magnolia, who gets cheated on by her boyfriend, who's named BJ, by the way. His name is BJ. But anyways, he cheats on her, and it's just like a known thing. You know it from the start of the book, but she's still not over him, and he's still not over her. So they play this like toxic game with each other. I honestly, it's a miracle that I actually finished this. I think, well, I remember reading it and I was like, what am I reading? Literally, like, what am I actually reading? I just remember thinking, I was like, this is the weirdest romance I've ever read. Anyways, you would think that I would not want to read the second book after that. But the second book follows a completely different girl, and I was intrigued because the second book essentially overlaps the first one chronologically. Like, they take place at the exact same time, but you see like this totally like other perspective to it. Now this book, I liked it a lot more than Magnolia Parks just because I think I liked Daisy a lot more as a main character. The relationship also definitely was not as toxic. The stakes were also higher. Daisy's older brother was like a leader of this like gang that pulls off like art heists or something. Like, it was so random. But again, it was just so crazy that it was addicting. But I finished the whole thing and I was like, am I really gonna go on to read the third book? And I think I was like, no, I'm not. But would I recommend? Probably not. No. I mean, yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend. All right, moving on to May. Okay, so this month I read 4 books. And the first book of the month was The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. And so, let's see. Okay, I remember I was intrigued by this book because I just thought the premise was so like out there. Basically, in college, the main character, she needs cheap housing. So she agrees to, now, you have to suspend reality for a little bit here, but she agrees to get married to this other guy who was also looking for housing so they can get like cheap campus housing or something because they're married. Again, I don't know. They are like legally married, but they like barely know each other. They're literally just roommates. And after they like graduate or something, they were like gonna get it like either divorced or annulled or something. I don't know. But anyways, apparently legally that never actually happens and she doesn't realize, but like she's still like legally married to this guy. Until one day he shows up and he's like, hey, like I need a favor, like I need you to pretend to be my wife, because it turns out he's actually from this like super mega rich family and his sister is getting married and I don't remember why, but he like needs a date for like some specific reason and he's like, technically like my family thinks that I'm married because, or well, technically I am married. So anyways, I need you to come be my date for this wedding. I think it was heavily inspired by Crazy Rich Asians, but unpopular opinion, I don't even really like Crazy Rich Asians, so yeah, I didn't enjoy this one too much either, but if you did like that, you'd probably like this. So okay, the next 3 books I read in May, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about them because I have a whole reading vlog on my channel of me reading these 3 books. If you are curious, you can watch those. But I read Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, which was her new release that came out this year. And this one is a maybe for me on the recommend list. I thought there were some like pacing issues And I just thought her other books were a lot stronger. I think the romance wasn't as convincing in this one, and also there was like a whole secondary plotline going on that kind of like distracted from the focus. It was fine, but I would definitely recommend her other books over this one. The next book I read was Silver Elite by Dani Francis. So this is a dystopian romance. When I talk about it in the reading vlog, I'm kind of like, I didn't really like it, and I'm like making all these excuses for it. But now that I've like sat with it for enough time, I can confidently say like, no, I just didn't like it. Like, I was trying to excuse it and like be like, well, I can maybe understand why the author did this, but no. No, just steer clear. The next book I read, also part of the reading vlog, was The Love Haters by Katherine Center. Guys, this is so bad. My battery just died. And I thought my like backup battery I have was charged, so I put that into my camera, but apparently that's dead too. So now I might have to film this on my phone. Okay, wait. Wait, oh my god. I need to get like a phone tripod because I don't have like, okay, wait, that works. I apologize if the quality's bad. I don't know how this is gonna come out. Where did I leave off? Oh, Love Haters. This is by Katherine Center, and Katherine Center is probably my favorite romance author. She just never misses. And so this book was no exception. I really like this book. Like, I'm like not talking about it with that much enjoyment. Like, it sounds like I didn't really like it, but this was a 5-star book for me. It literally felt like watching a rom-com. Or I talked about this in my reading vlog, but like if you have watched Anyone But You, it kind of felt like that. Like, it was like lighthearted, fun, and happy, but also like there were moments that were just like really like deep and like sweet. It was just a very classic like rom-com type book. Okay, the next month is June, and in June I read 5 books. So the first 3 books of the month, I'm gonna just talk about them together because they were part of a trilogy. But it's the Fifth Wave trilogy by Rick Yancey. These are science fiction books about an alien invasion, and these came out like a while ago. Like, I was obsessed with these books in middle school, like obsessed. I was back home over the summer and I was looking at my bookshelf and I was like, oh my god, it's been so long since I read that. So I was like, I kind of want to reread the whole trilogy, so I did. But I don't know, this time around, like, it was just kind of like okay to me. I don't know if that's because like I already like read it twice, so it wasn't like surprising to me this time around, but still will remain like some of my top books just because of like nostalgia purposes. But I don't know, I just like didn't have the best time this time around. And then the 4th book I read in June was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Okay, so this is a childhood friends to lovers to they don't speak for some amount of years to them reconnecting in the future. So very classic trope. But I actually really liked the way that it was developed in this book. Like, I was eating this book up. I thought the writing was so good. Basically, the way it's written is there's 2 timelines. So it's like the past timeline of like them when they were kids and they would see each other each summer. So you can see how the relationship changed each year of their like childhood. And then they didn't talk for like 12 years or something. Like, it was an insane amount of time. So the entire book, you're like wondering like what could have happened that was so bad to make them not talk for 12 years. Once you hit that like 80% mark or whatever, that's when the big reveal happens and you find out the actual reason of like why they didn't talk for so long. I knew that it was gonna be something like bad because 12 years is a really long time, but what the actual reveal was, once I found out, it was almost like, oh, that kind of ruined it for me. Like, at that point I almost like didn't even want the characters together anymore. For that reason, I gave it 3 stars, but I had a good time up until that point. I'm pretty sure like Prime Video's adapting this or something. I think they're making it into a movie. I don't know. I think it's like their next big project now that The Summer I Turned Pretty is over. So I mean, I'll be watching it when it comes out. I just wish that the reveal was like anything but what it was. Okay, the last book I read in June is The Rom-Commers by Katherine Center. So another Katherine Center book. This is about 2 screenwriters writing a script together. Basically, the male love interest in this book, he's this like very established like Hollywood like big time screenwriter who's done all these like blockbuster movies, and he really wants to get his new project greenlit, but the studio's like, we are not going to greenlight this unless you write like this script that we want. And so he writes it, and the script is like really bad. So then his agent wants to basically find him help, like find him like a ghostwriter, or I don't know if it's like a ghostwriter or just like a partner to work with. And he's very opposed with the idea because he's kind of like this big hotshot who kind of has an ego about his writing. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. Anyways, enter the female main character, and she's like a nobody in Hollywood. Like she's very much like on the come up, so this is like a huge opportunity for her. So anyways, they end up working on the script together, and they like have all these like creative differences, but then you see them like find their groove working together, and then they end up like creating this script, and it was just so good. It was a rom-com. Like it was perfect. I loved it. I gave this like 4 stars only because I thought the first quarter of the book was kind of slow, and the first quarter of the book I really didn't like the love interest, because he's meant to be this like, he's meant to have like an ego because he's like a big hotshot Hollywood guy, you know. And I found it very off-putting the way he was acting the first quarter of the book, and I was like, is he gonna be like this the whole book? But then obviously he has his character development, but I don't know. That's why it was 4 stars for me, but I really enjoyed this. This was really good. I would definitely recommend. Oh my god, on to July. We're like halfway done. Actually, no, more than halfway, because I didn't read anything for August, September, October. So actually, we're actually a good amount through. Okay. Oh my god. If you're still watching, like, I love you. Okay. The first book I read in July is The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hilderbrand. It's about this old hotel that like was really grand hotel back in the day, but then there's this big fire that happened, and like today it's just like this old like abandoned building until this London billionaire decides to buy the building, and he hires the main character Elizabeth Keaton, who's a Nantucket local, to be the general manager. So she's in charge of like, she's basically in charge of everything. And so you're mainly following her and like her goal to basically turn this hotel from like this like old abandoned building into this like super popular like tourist destination. You're also following like a bunch of the staff that work at the hotel. And then you're also following a ghost of a girl who was killed in the fire from the hotel in like 1922. So you see the ghost perspective as well, and it's like a very interesting POV to read. And yeah, so you're following like a bunch of different characters, and there's not really like a specific plot. It's very character driven, but it was just so good because there's just like so many different characters you're following, and they all have like their own struggles, their own motivations, and it's like very cool to see how like that all intersects to create this like community. This was a 5-star. I would highly recommend, but definitely wait to read this in the summer. Like this is like the epitome of like a perfect like summer beach read. Okay, so the next book that I read in July is called The Compound by Aileen Roll. Here's my little qualm with this book. So when I first found out about the synopsis of the book, I was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. I need to read this. Basically, it was described to me as Love Island if it was a psychological thriller. And I was like, sign me up. Sign me up. It's a reality TV game show and or dating show. So there's like this compound that's in the middle of the desert, and they have cameras on them at all times, and the audience at home, it's like a live stream that they can tune in whenever they want. Like the producers edit the footage into episodes, but there's also like a live stream that's like always running. I thought the message was super cool because it's supposed to kind of highlight like the psychological aspect of like being on a show, like what that can do to you, like constantly like faking for the cameras, like knowing you're being watched. And there's also a lot of commentary on like capitalism, because the way like this show works is that each individual person is given these daily tasks, and you're not allowed to talk about what your tasks are with anybody else in the compound. But like if you complete your task, then you get to go to like your little like mailbox or something, and you get gifted like a gift by like a brand or a sponsor or something, and then you like are wearing it on TV. And then the more like harder your daily tasks are, like the better gifts you get, and the more you do, the better like gifts you get as well. But it also like, it's interesting because the people in the compound don't know what people's tasks are. They don't know if an interaction they're having with someone is genuine or if it's just because they want to get a daily task. So all this premise and everything sounded very interesting. But like I said, it's supposed to be a psychological thriller. So I was like, when is the thriller aspect of this gonna come into play? I'm like waiting for like the ball to drop because it's a thriller. So I'm like, something big's gonna happen. But then like around like 65-70% in, like the stakes are like really high, and like it's like life or death. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the conflict. Like, let's go. This is what this has been building up to. But then the conflict is resolved in like maybe 3 chapters, but then there's like still like a whole like 20% left of the book to go through. The last 20% of the book was such like I was like trudging through it. Like nothing interesting was happening. The ending of this book was probably the most underwhelming thing I have ever read. I think the concept is interesting, but I don't know if I would recommend it just because I think the execution wasn't the best. Oh my god, I'm realizing that at the start of this I said I was gonna keep the plot descriptions to like a minimum, and I realized like I've not been doing that. Like I am just yapping. So I'm gonna try to keep it shorter. Okay, the next book that I read is One by One by Freida McFadden. And if you've heard of Freida McFadden, she basically just writes thrillers. They're all like super short. Like they're always between like 200-300 pages. Very quick page turners, like very simple. I don't think any of her thrillers have ever like blown my mind. Like they've never been anything like crazy, but they're like fun to read. They're easy to binge. So One by One is no exception. This is about like a group of friends that like go to this like cabin in the woods, but then like on their hike they start getting like picked off one by one, and as the group gets smaller and smaller, it's like no one knows who to trust. So, you know, interesting enough concept, nothing revolutionary or like mind-blowing about this. It was just like classic thriller, but fun to read. But yeah, I'd recommend, but again, like don't expect anything crazy, just simple thriller. Okay, the next book that I read is Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This is the same author that wrote The Reappearance of Rachel Price, which I talked about. That was the first book I talked about in this video. But this is her first adult mystery. And the premise of this is super interesting. Basically, the main character, she gets attacked by this intruder on Halloween night. And she's supposed to die, but somehow it's like a miracle. Like she survives her injuries, but she like has like a blood clot in her brain that the doctors say will have like maybe a week before the clot like bursts and it kills her. And so basically she has a week left to live, and she decides to spend that week trying to discover like who, like basically trying to solve her own murder, like who attacked her, why they want her dead, because she's like, I don't have any enemies, like I don't know who would want to kill me. So she spends that final week of her life basically trying to figure out like who tried to murder her. And it's super interesting. Holly Jackson always writes good mysteries. I think honestly this might be my favorite book by her yet, and I've read a lot by her. Yeah, really good. Definitely recommend. Okay, the next book I read this month is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I didn't really like it. This was very similar to Every Summer After, in the sense that they're like childhood best friends, and then they like don't talk for many years and they end up like reconnecting. And it's also like dual timeline. But I really liked Every Summer After, but this one I didn't like it. I hated both the characters. I was bored for like so long in this book, and the reveal, like I said, in Every Summer After, the reveal kind of like ruined the book for me. In this one, I just thought the reveal was just like, I remember reading and I was like, this is not real. Like this is just not real. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Okay. The last book I read in July is The Perfect Couple. This is also by Ellen Hilderbrand. So this is about a wedding that's taking place on Nantucket, but the morning of the wedding, the maid of honor is found dead on the beach. And then basically the whole wedding party becomes a suspect. The way it was written was like so good. Basically, you're following the chief of police in Nantucket as he's like trying to work out who the murderer is. But then as he's like interviewing all these like different suspects, like all these people in the wedding party, you're also getting to read like their perspectives about events that have like been happening like in like the months leading up to this wedding. Yeah, it was really good. Definitely recommend. I think it's they made it a show on Netflix, like a limited series. After I read the book, I was curious and I like watched like the first 10 minutes of it or something, and then I stopped watching. So I don't know if the show was any good, but the book definitely was. Okay, and now here's when the big time jump happened and I didn't read anything for 3 months. So skipping August, September, and October, we are now in November. But I read a lot this month. I read 7 books this month, so it definitely made up for lost time. But starting off with the first book, it is called The Heartbreak Hotel by Eleanor Clover. This was a very cheesy romance, so I guess if you're in the mood for that, like this one was fine, but I don't know, I've definitely read like way better romances, so this isn't even one that I would recommend. Like if you asked me for like a romance recommendation, this would not be one like top of mind. The next 2 books from November, I'm just going to talk about them together because they're part of the same series. And this is gonna be somewhat of a rant, which is also part of the reason I wanted to skip through The Heartbreak Hotel really quickly. So it's called A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain. I literally just found this like, I think on like my Goodreads recommended page, and I thought the like synopsis on Goodreads is interesting. So I downloaded it on my Kindle and then I read it. So I read the first chapter and I was kind of like unsure on like whether or not like I liked it enough to like continue reading. But that night before I went to bed, I was like, let me just like read a few more chapters before I go to sleep, because I was having trouble sleeping. So I was like, if I read, like it'll make my eyes tired and then like I'll fall asleep. So I read a couple more chapters, but then I ended up getting invested, and so instead of falling asleep, I ended up staying up all night and reading the whole book. And this was a fantasy, like this was like a thick fantasy. I think it was like maybe like 500 pages or something. And I read the whole thing. Like I went to bed at like 6 a.m. that night. So it's safe to say that I liked it. Like I would not have stayed up all night reading it if I didn't like it. I thought it was very interesting. I finished reading it, like literally stayed up all night, and I was like, and the next day I was like, I'm downloading the second book, gonna keep reading. Because also the plot twist at the end of the first book was like pretty good too. And then it all goes downhill. The first book I gave 4 stars. The second book I gave 1. I don't know what could have possibly gone so wrong in between the first one and the second one. Like it literally, it felt like every character had like a lobotomy or something. Like they were acting completely different. The plot itself was so weak compared to the first book. I felt like nothing happened. Like I feel like this book had major second book syndrome where like nothing happened. It was all just like a big lead up to the third book. And it was also so unoriginal. Like there were I think almost every single plot line in this book felt like something directly from the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Like genuinely I was like, where did we go so wrong? Like this feels like a complete different like book series, like complete different universe in the first book. Like what happened? So yeah, I think as a whole I wouldn't recommend, because I don't want you guys to also get your hopes up after the first book to be then so disappointed by the second book. So just steer clear. Okay, so the next set of books I read in November was the Letters of Enchantment series. So this is Divine Rivals, and then the sequel Ruthless Vows, and then the prequel Wild Reverence. So Divine Rivals, I reread it, and I don't really have to say anything about this. I feel like I bring this book up in like every video I've made on this channel so far, but it is my favorite book of all time. Like I don't need to elaborate. I can't show you because I'm recording my phone, but it's literally like a page from this book is literally my lock screen on my phone. I love this book so much. Perfect. So I reread that, and then I read the sequel. This year, Rebecca Ross released a prequel, and it's actually a standalone prequel, so like you are able to just read it on your own. Like you don't have to have read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, but obviously like I did. This was so good. Like I don't know what I was expecting, because it was a prequel, but like based on the like synopsis, it just seemed like so far disconnected from Divine Rivals, but this was so good. Like I'm trying to find the right words to like express how I'm feeling. Honestly, you just have to read it. Like, honestly, read all 3 books. Read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows and Wild Reverence. I love this book. This was amazing. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, and then the last book in November, I'm not gonna spend too long on this because this was another reread, but it was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And I decided to reread this because I literally saw like an edit on TikTok of like Six of Crows, and then I was like, oh my god, it's been years since I read this. It's one of my like favorite books of all time. I think I've talked about it a lot more in detail in my ranking 5-star reads video if you want to check that out. And now we finally made it to December. We made it, just 2 more books, only 2 books in December. And both these are actually rereads, so it shouldn't take me very long to explain. The first book that I reread in December was Funny Story by Emily Henry. This I also talked about in my ranking 5-star reads video, so check that out if you want more details. But this is just, it's an Emily Henry romance. She's like huge in the romance genre for a reason. This is about, so the main character, she's engaged, but the night of her fiance's bachelor party, he ends up breaking up with her because he realizes he's in love with his childhood best friend. But she, the best friend, also happened to be in a relationship at the time. And so she breaks up with her boyfriend. So the main character's fiance basically leaves her to be with his childhood best friend. And her boyfriend now needs a roommate because he needs someone to split rent with because they were living together. And Daphne, who's the main character, also needs a place to live. So they end up living together. And for like a while, they're just like roommates. They're like both like victims in the situation, and they like don't really have anything in common other than the fact that their partners left them for each other. But then over time they like develop a friendship, and then they eventually start dating. Okay, we're back on my camera because my phone is out of storage. But luckily my battery was able to recharge in the meantime, which just goes to show you how long I've been talking. It's now fully charged. But anyways, picking up where I left off. The romance in this is good, but honestly, this is a 5-star for me. Not so much because of the romance, but more of just like the main character and like the whole journey she goes on. So that's Funny Story. And then this book, I literally finished it like yesterday. But this is also a reread, also by Emily Henry. But it's People We Meet on Vacation. I read this back in like, I don't know, like 2022, I don't even know. But it's getting turned into a movie, and that movie comes out on January 8th. And so obviously I wanted to reread it before the movie comes out. So that's what I did. And I think I didn't even like it that much the first time I read it. But the reason was because I was so sick. Like I remember I was home from school one day and I just like was laying in bed listening to the audiobook. But I was like so sick that I don't think I was giving it like the attention that it needed. I loved it this time around. This is so cute. This is basically just a Friends to Lovers. So excited for the movie. The trailer looks amazing. I will be watching this when it drops on Netflix on January 8th. Yeah, highly, highly recommend. And even if you don't want to read the book, I think you should watch the movie because it looks promising. And yeah, we made it to the end. If you stuck around this long, like genuinely, you are amazing. Thank you so much. But yeah, that was all the books I read in 2025. And I hope you found some great recommendations out of this. I'd love to hear any recommendations that you guys have too, so definitely leave those in the comments. And thank you so much for watching my videos and supporting me. It really means a lot.